Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Wednesday, October 21st. I'm your host, Rod Bloom. Joining me today is James Rapien. How are things going?
Oh, they're going well. How are you? Thanks for having me, Rod.
Oh, things are going great. I guess we're both teams are coming off losses. Everybody knows you were a Cleveland guy for a period of time, and now you're back in Cincinnati, which is home for you. So I've got your whole list of credentials here. I'm just going to go through a few of these, and anything else you want to throw in there is fine with me. So you're a reporter for SI New, so Sports Illustrated. And then publisher at All Bengals, host for you're a host for 3 different podcasts.
3 podcasts, yes, sir.
So Locked On Bengals, Locked On NFL, and Bengals Brawl.
Yep. So I'm talking football and NFL and mostly Bengals a lot.
Nice. So I know a lot of people are following you probably from when you were up in Cleveland, Browns fans, but definitely still a great follow at James Rapien. So definitely everybody should give you a follow just to keep up with you with what's happening and check out your Bengal stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I still love seeing the Cleveland tweets. I still follow a lot of people from Cleveland, obviously, and great town. I love Cleveland, man. I live downtown and a lot to do. I encourage Bengals fans all the time. I'm like, the one road trip, and obviously it was that Thursday nighter, and it was much different this year because of COVID. But every year, especially if it's not December, because the past few up until this year, the Battle of Ohio's were in December. Especially if it's September, October, get your tail up to Cleveland and enjoy the road trip. I encourage always Bengals fans to go up there because I love Cleveland.
Yeah, definitely. So, and you're a UC alum. I've got I got one graduate. I've got another son at UC finishing up, and I got another one maybe possibly going there. So.
Oh, nice! It's a great school. Yeah, I love UC, and it's changed a lot since I went there, man. The campus is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I just thought we'd talk, a little Browns, little Bengals, and kind of direction of both teams and things like that. So let's kind of just kick it off with some Bengals talk. So Bengals come into this week with a record of 1-4-1. So people are going to see that and think, this is the Bengals. They're no good. But man, looking at the games, they've been in every game. At least if you look at the final score. With the exception of the Ravens game. But the Ravens have been, beating up a lot of people. So, they've been. I guess it depends how you look at that Browns game. I mean, as a Browns fan, I really didn't feel like the game was ever in jeopardy because the Bengals were kind of scoring after the Browns were, a couple scores up. Mm-hmm. But it still ended up, Browns only won by 5 points. So that was a close game. Tied with the Eagles, which, I mean, I think the Eagles are better in their record. They beat the Jags, who have beat some other teams. Played the Colts really tough, obviously. Played the Chargers very tough. Probably thought you should have gotten a win there, right?
Yeah, I actually today the Bengals. Who said this? Joe Burrow said it, and so did Zach Taylor. They feel like they should be 4-2, and it's the Chargers game. A game that they threw the game-winning touchdown, and AJ was called for an interference. And then a couple of weeks later, they tied with the Eagles, and then they were up 21-0 on the Colts. And so, I totally get why they feel that way. And I agree with you, by the way. The Browns were in firm control week 2. That never felt like, even though it was a 5-point game, 28-23 with 5:55 to go, you never felt like the Bengals are going to stop the Browns, and they didn't. And so I don't really count that as a close one, and I don't really think the Bengals do either. They look at the Ravens and the Browns games as 2 games they just came up short. But the other 4, they feel like they should have won, and unfortunately for them, they're 1-4-1.
Yeah. So what do you think the psyche of this team is, of the Bengals team? Do you think they feel like a 1-4-1 team, or do you see a team that still has a lot of confidence and thinks they've still got that's still going out trying to make a statement each week. I mean, obviously if they're up 21-0 on the Colts, that's how I would think they would be. But what's your feeling of how this team is?
I think they're teetering, and I think you're going to see a really good effort, and they've responded each and every week, right? They get their tail really kicked by the Ravens, and then they suddenly jump all over the Colts 21-0. So they've responded week to week, and I think you'll see that again this week. But I do think if they don't win on Sunday against the Browns, and it's obviously a game where they're home underdogs, if they don't win, I don't know when their next win is going to come, and I don't think it's going to come anytime soon, because then they have the Titans at home, then a bye, then the Steelers. So suddenly 1-4-1, which really should have been 2-3-1, but you blew that lead to the Colts, could really snowball into 1-7-1 after 9 games, and that's crazy. So I think this is a huge game for them. I expect them to come out focused, and obviously the Browns are going to do the same given what happened last week.
Yeah, I mean, we're jumping to the Browns, but it's really an interesting game for the Browns too to see, because they came out and played well after getting stomped by the Ravens, but that Ravens game week 1, it's kind of, they had the excuse of, well, we didn't have any time with the coach and new players and preseason and all this, so we can just kind of not put too much credence into that game. And then they came out and played well after that, but now they've taken a beating, so now we want to see how Stefanski gets these guys ready, and if they can come out with the same attitude that they came out with in week 2. So it's definitely an interesting matchup.
I totally agree, and I think really it's going to be interesting to see if this Bengals defense, they don't have DJ Reader, they certainly have question marks at linebacker. Their linebackers got their tails kicked in against the Browns week 2. I remember Andy Janovich afterwards was like, "Oh, we could have ran for 300 on them," and we knew it. And he wasn't wrong. Like I posted that article, and I had Bengals fans like, "Yep, they could have," And you're talking Browns Bengals. Like you would think fans would be angry, and they're like, "No, they could have done that easily." And so you really want to see if the Jermaine Pratts and Josh Bynes and Akeem Davis-Gaithers, if these guys can step up, because they got their head kicked in the running game. I mean, it was just bad. It was really ugly. They were dominated, and they're going to be without DJ Reader for a second straight game. He's out for the year, and he was commanding double teams week 2. He was a guy of all the defenders. He showed up and actually made a difference, not only week 2, but all season. So without him, if I'm Kevin Stefanski, it's like, all right, Baker, those ribs are still sore. Kareem Hunt, I know you're battling some stuff too, but we're going to give you the ball 25, 30 times, and you're going to really have to stop him and contain him. And he's had success against the Bengals even long before he joined the Browns, so I wouldn't be shocked at all if that's the game plan.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Nick Chubb's out, but yeah, I mean, you would think Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson would get a lot of carries. I mean, the Bengals have some other guys. I was looking at the injury report, and Atkins and Dunlap are on that list again, and a few other guys too. Browns have a few guys, but it's looking a little better than it did last week against the Steelers for the Browns. So I don't know if I don't know how much of an advantage the Browns are going to get there. I mean, the Browns, Phillips and Sendejo and Teller. The Browns really want to get Teller back in there at guard, but I think that if Sendejo's out, you're going to see a lot of fans kind of happy, because there have been a lot of people want to see him cut, which is ridiculous. But but yeah, so that's interesting. But if you guys are missing more guys off your defensive line, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for to stop the Browns running game.
It is, no doubt about it. And one thing worth monitoring, there's a chance Mike Daniels, who wasn't able to go week 2, there's a chance he was activated on Wednesday, that 21-day practice window. I would say it's 50-50 at best that he can play Sunday. He was on injured reserve with an elbow. I think more likely next week against Tennessee, but there's a chance that he can go. Geno Atkins is going to play, even though he didn't practice on Wednesday, just a regular maintenance day. So they have some guys in there, but to your point, that's still a weakness, and that's still something I would really make these young linebackers come up and make the tackles and deal with these guys, play in, play out. When you're talking about Janovich and you're talking about that offensive line, because I think eventually, like you saw in week 2, by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, they're just not going to win any part of it.
Yeah, the Browns really haven't used Andy Janovich as much as I thought they would. So maybe they'll use him a little bit more this week. I mean, he's kind of been out there for a handful of plays, a handful of series each game. So maybe he'll get a little bit more of a shot this week. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on just a couple of the Bengals players, and particularly not that he's a player, but head coach Zach Taylor. On Twitter, James, I saw somebody saying something about, and this is one person, but is there really any kind of vibe that people are not happy with Zach Taylor and the job he's doing?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, I think so. And I think that the reason behind that isn't necessarily, a win-loss thing, even though that certainly would help. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that there's clearly a disconnect between him and some of these players. And you see John Ross is unhappy this week. Auden Tate was unhappy for being a healthy scratch week 2. Carlos Dunlap over the past couple of weeks has been demoted and voiced his frustration. And there's other guys too in other instances over the past 18 months that have taken place. And I do think that, one, if you're 3-18-1 and you haven't won a road game in a year and a half, then frustration is going to build in general. But communication has to be key. And I think he struggled in that department, and that's what we're starting to see. So when I talked earlier about how important a win is, I think it's huge, because at some point, winning just matters. And I think Zach Taylor's a nice guy, and I think he's done a good job of monitoring and keeping the locker room together despite the bad record. I mean, they were playing hard for him last year. You saw it in week 17 against the Browns. They beat the Browns. And so they were playing hard. So he's done a good job of that, but at some point it's got to translate for guys to continue to buy in. And I think we're getting to that teetering point a bit. And fans are going to complain always, but I do think that the next few weeks are going to be really big for Zach Taylor, just to show these guys and kind of win these guys' trust over it. That starts Sunday. If you beat the Browns, you feel much, much better about yourself than if you fall to 1-5-1.
Yeah, have the Bengals done anything to improve the protection for Joe Burrow since the Browns game? Because the Browns, even as a Browns fan, I mean, it was kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, it was rough. It was awful. And it was Joe Burrow putting the entire team on his shoulders and saying, we're going to keep competing. And that's exactly what he did. He threw it 61 times, dropped back, I think 70-plus times, was just really working his tail off for every single yard. And it shouldn't be that way. That's another thing with Zach. It shouldn't be that way if you're this offensive genius, right? It isn't that way with Kevin Stefanski, right? Because one, I get it, the offensive line is better, but two, he's dialing up the right plays and using his talent. And I do think that we've seen over the past couple of weeks the offensive line improve. The one big change from week 2 to now, Alex Redmond is going to start at right guard. He started the past couple of weeks. It won't be Fred Johnson, which is who you saw in the first half, and it won't be Billy Price, which is who you saw, I believe, in the second half. I believe he was inserted into the lineup in the second half. If not, it was Fred Johnson the whole time. I think it was Fred the whole time in week 2, and he was awful. Okay. I mean, he was just dreadful. And you remember the strip sack of Burrow where he just gets crushed, and that was because they targeted, hey, we're going to go after this right guard. And so I think Redmond's better there. Jonah Williams is certainly much better than he was. I think he's clearly a franchise left tackle. So, he gets beat every now and then, but overall he's playing really well in what is essentially his rookie season since he missed all of last year due to injury. But outside of that, the guards can still be exploited. Alex Redmond's allowed 8 pressures. Michael Jordan at left guard has allowed 18 pressures according to Pro Football Focus. So you can still get after these guys in the two guard spots are really the glaring holes. As big of a villain as Bobby Hart is in Cincinnati at right tackle, the two guard spots are the biggest concerns right now. So when you're looking, when the Browns are looking, where should they exploit what matchups? I would attack the two guard spots at 60 and 62 and see if they can stop you, because while they're better than they were week 2, they're certainly really far from being good.
And I'm sure we could talk about this topic alone for probably 30 minutes or so, but I don't know that I've heard your thoughts, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the Joe Mixon contract extension and what your thoughts are as far as what you think the Browns should do with Nick Chubb going forward next season. Next season would be his last season.
Yeah, I was in favor of the Mixon extension at the time. Right now, it's hard to see his value because the offensive line has been bad, partially because of some of Zach Taylor's play calling as well. But I still like it because, look, he's a guy, 24 years old. You're not paying really anyone else in that age range yet. You're probably going to pay William Jackson III, at least potentially. You'll probably pay Jesse Bates. But outside of that, there aren't many guys you've drafted and developed, and Mixon is one of those guys. And I do think he has the potential to be I don't think he is yet, to be the best running back in this division. The problem is they don't use him the way I think they should. We saw in week 2, and it's funny because we haven't seen this much since. He had 4 receptions in the first half, and one was this little option route where he was going up against the linebacker and he could pick to go outside or cut inside, and he cut inside and Burrow hit him on a slant. It was like a 22-yard gain. Those are the type of plays I would use with Joe Mixon. And that's one of the many things I question with Zach Taylor is he's a guy that can catch the ball like Kareem Hunt. Right? How many times have you seen, even Freddie Kitchens knew to do this last year, where you get Kareem Hunt, and you get him in space and you throw the ball to him, and heck, the touchdown catch he had a couple of weeks ago, where he's jumping up for it, the Hunt catch in the end zone, like those are the type of things I think Mixon is capable of. So from a talent standpoint, I get it. I also understand the other side where it's like, hey, running back wise, you don't need to pay it. So when I look at Nick Chubb, let's see. Let's wait and see what he does, because you do have Kareem Hunt, who I think, let's say Nick Chubb's the third best running back in the league, and I'm just throwing it out there. Well, Hunt's probably 7th or 8th. So is it worth it, or do you need to go another route? And I think that's the part that you got to kind of wait and see on. So would I be okay with paying Nick Chubb? Absolutely. Right. He's one of those guys that is quiet killer, right? He's a quiet killer, and he's hard to bring down, and he's got the speed and stuff. So it has nothing to do with him, the player or the person, but let's evaluate and wait and see position wise what else they need to pay and go from there. Because like if it comes down to Denzel Ward or Nick Chubb, I'm paying Denzel Ward, and that's just that's just kind of how I view it. And we'll see if the Bengals made the right decision. It depends on what they do this coming offseason with the offensive line and other spots.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, but it's tough because Nick Chubb is probably my favorite Cleveland Brown, and I think that's the case for a lot of people, just because of his personality and his talent and the way he plays the game. So, quick impression of Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, the record kind of speaks for itself, but do you think we have enough information to really evaluate him yet?
No, not fully. And I would say that if they were 2-4 as well. Look, he's certainly off to a good start, but it's a start that he should have gotten off to. And you're supposed to beat the Bengals, and you're supposed to beat Washington, and you're supposed to beat some of those teams. And that's not a knock. That's just the reality of it. But I do like what I see, because I see a professional. I don't see a disorganized, discombobulated guy like Freddie or Hugh on the sidelines. And so that's an upgrade already. So do I think they've upgraded? Absolutely. I think you can say that. But do we know what Stefanski is overall yet? No, but I think that's okay. I think right now it's clear he doesn't trust Baker the way you're probably going to need to trust the quarterback that leads the Browns to the Super Bowl. That part, I think, is very obvious when you look at his pass attempts versus what they're trying to do on offense. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's exactly what I would do. But You know, you hope that that they're able to get the most out of Baker and start to develop him. And hopefully this isn't what he is, because this isn't enough. And so we'll see there. But yeah, I'm pleased with the job he's done so far, and really impressed with Andrew Berry. Honestly, that was I was questioning both of those, to be honest with you. I wanted experience in Cleveland, and you know, I wanted them. I wasn't shy about it at the time. Josh McDaniels was the guy I would have went with. I thought he would have commanded respect right away and pulled the right buttons and pushed the right buttons, whatever you want to say. And Andrew Berry made Kevin Stefanski's job a lot easier, because the flaws that were on last year's roster that are obvious, right? Like Browns fans, I get it. They're ripping Andrew Sendejo right now, and they have weaknesses at linebacker. Well, guess what? Offensive line is about 50,000 more, times more important than those positions. And
Sendejo wasn't supposed to start either. So.
No, exactly. I mean, Delpit gets injured, but that's my point is, he made the necessary changes that you had to make minimum. And then he goes out and gets Austin Hooper, and I think he's going to continue to grow in that offense and be more of a factor. So, no, I really like what the pairing has done, and I think Stefanski's done a good job. And I think I picked them second in the division. Either way, I had them in the playoffs. So they're certainly on track to do that.
So if you're looking at the direction of these two teams kind of just in the future, not necessarily this season, how do you feel about the Browns and the Bengals?
You feel better about the Bengals quarterback. I think Joe Burrow is clearly better than Baker Mayfield. And after 6 games, you could say that. And I believed in Baker, and I still think he can be a good player. Of the two, I think it's clear. You'd want the taller, faster, more athletic guy that is doing everything at the line of scrimmage and was week 2, yet alone now. That being said, I like the head coach better in Cleveland as of now. I like the GM better in Cleveland as of now. Ownership's always weird in both areas, the Haslams and the Browns. So, you could say it's a scratch there. I don't know one way or the other. But overall, talent-wise, you like the Browns as well. And unfortunately for both of these teams, they're both ascending. I think the Bengals are probably, a year or 2 behind the Browns. Right, they're where the Browns were in maybe 2018, hopefully from a talent standpoint, and who knows what they finish with record-wise. But the big difference, or the big bummer rather, if you're rooting for either of these Ohio teams, and personally, I would much rather both of these teams succeed than Baltimore or Pittsburgh. But Baltimore they're not going anywhere. Right, they got the MVP. They're well coached. They have a good GM. They have a good front office, and Ben Roethlisberger's reminding everyone that he's still really good, and that defense is awesome. And they fall into Chase Claypool. The Steelers are so good at finding these receivers, it's ridiculous. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, James Washington. They find all these mid-rounders that end up being studs. And so it looks like it's going to be a really, really competitive division. I was on plenty of radio shows before the season and podcasts, and I said it was the best division in football. And I had some question it and say, oh, no, that's the NFC West. Now, to me, it's still the AFC North, and I know the Bengals don't have a good record, but they're they could have 2 or 3 more wins right now, and I think they're going to compete every week, and they're not going to be a pushover, even with the injuries and the stuff that they've had. So I think it's a really tough division, and one that's going to be competitive for a long time, and I'm hoping that the Ohio teams kind of rise above the other two.
I hope the same thing. So to kind of wrap things up, what do you expect to be different Sunday and Sunday's game than what happened in week 2?
It was such a weird game in week 2. I mean, it was just, it felt like a blowout, but it was never really a blowout. And one, I think that the Bengals are going to be able to slow down this Browns offense just a little bit, just a little bit more, be a little bit of a thorn in the side, so to speak, instead of just letting them go up and down the field and run it right at them. I mean, because if you watch that film, that's got to motivate you. If I'm Zach Taylor, I'd put that Janovich quote all over the locker room, because I want everyone to know, hey, man, you're going to let them come into your house now and beat you the same way that they did on September 18th, I believe it was. That cannot happen. And so from that aspect, I expect it to be probably a more physical game, less one-sided in the physicality standpoint. And then on the other side of it, with the Bengals and they have the ball, they're going to try to be much more balanced. The last thing they want is Joe Burrow having to drop back on 2nd and 3rd and long a bunch. I think AJ Green, I know he was involved from a target standpoint. I think he's going to have much more of an impact this week. And that doesn't mean he's going to have 200 yards and be vintage AJ Green, but last week he had 8 receptions, 96 yards. He had a lot of third down conversions. I think that's what you're going to see from him this week. You'll see Burrow go to him on 3rd and long, maybe 4th down if they have to go for it at times. And in the trio of receivers, and probably the biggest difference on this team outside of like injuries, T. Higgins is a huge part of their offense now. So he might be their default one. I don't know. You could say Boyd's their one because he's, a slot machine and so good in the slot too. But you're going to see much more T. Higgins. He played a lot of snaps in Cleveland, but he didn't have a lot of receptions or a lot of impact. I think that's a big change. He led them in receiving last week, has had 4 receptions, I think, in the past 4 games, at least 4 receptions. So he's a big part of the offense. So it should be a good game. I'm actually expecting it to be pretty close. I don't think it's going to be super one-sided. But in close games, I got to be honest, Rod. In close games, Zach Taylor won 11-1 as head coach of the Bengals. You got to lean Cleveland in a close one. And that's how I'm feeling, at least right now as we're recording.
Yeah. I'm hoping the Browns will recover from that loss and come out like they've looked other weeks. But yeah, hoping for a good game, James, and one where nobody gets hurt and all that stuff. And
agreed.
And really hope that both teams can get some wins against the other teams in the division from here on out.
I agree with you. And one thing to pay attention to, I know William Jackson III is dealing with a concussion. He was matched up 1-on-1 with Odell Beckham Jr. If he's out, then who knows? Maybe they will go up and down the field again because that's a pretty big loss in the Bengals secondary.
Yeah. All right. Well, James, this has been a lot of fun and very informative. So I know you've got a lot of other stuff going on, so I'm gonna let you get to it. But I appreciate you coming by and talking some Browns and Bengals. It's been good catching up with you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Anytime, Rod. I appreciate you having me, and hopefully we're doing this, next time we do this, or, whenever we're doing this one time before it's 2 winning teams playing each other with playoff aspirations. I think that would be fun.
That would be great. Yeah. And you are also on my list of guys I want to have a beer with sometime because you live like really close to me.
I'm in. I'm down. That would be fun. That would be fun too. We could have that talk with a beer while both teams are good. I don't know when that's going to happen for the Bengals, but we can at least have the beer.
Yeah. We'll revisit that.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Thanks so much, James.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Sure thing. This has been the Browns Blitz, and we will catch you next time.